Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here on a beautiful day in Jerusalem on our rooftop studio. My guest today is Jeremy Saltan, the Knesset Insider. Jeremy, thank you for being on the show.
It's a pleasure.
Elections coming up next week in Israel. Everyone's talking about it. The media in Israel is making this like a showdown between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his challenger, Isaac Herzog. Is this a real thing, or does the Prime Minister have this locked up?
Well, we have an election for the legislative branch of government, and that's the Knesset. The road to the Prime Minister's chair starts with our Knesset election, but there are two phases afterwards. There's the President's residence, and then there's a vote of approval of a majority of the Parliament members. So if we're talking about the first part, we do see that the Prime Minister and his chief opponent, the opposition leader, Bougie Herzog, are in a head-to-head race. But the minute we start talking about the other parties and the various potential scenarios that we can see in terms of building the next coalition government, it looks like Netanyahu has this one, I would say, wouldn't say necessarily in the bag, but at this current point of time, it's looking very good for the Prime Minister.
Now, you run one of the premier sites that take the polls from all around the country and then analyze them. Yet in recent elections, we saw that the polls really just missed the numbers right before the election. Are you expecting that to happen, or do you think the polls are going to hold?
Well, you always have the undecided vote, and there is a little bit of a shift that you are going to have. But what we have in KnessetJeremy.com is an interesting model where we take an average of the polls of the last week, we match them against the trend of the previous week average, and then we see where it is that we expect things to go. In the last election, this was a very successful model. Within one Knesset seat, we were able to predict 8 of the 12 seats. The 12 parties, rather, that were elected to the previous Knesset. Of course, last time the big surprise was Yair Lapid's Yesh Atid party, which was able to take a lot of seats from the undecided voters that were at either Likud, Labor, or Bayit Yehudi at that time, and bring them towards them on election day.
You mentioned last election surprise. Who could possibly be the surprise at this election?
Well, I think the Moshe Kachlon and the Kulanu party are in a great position to be the surprise of this election. Anytime you're coming in with a fresh new party, when you don't have to worry about what your entire list has either accomplished or not accomplished, and you're offering something new, that's something that resonates a lot with Israeli people.
One of the big stories of this election is the Israeli Election party, in that it's gone from so many seats to so little seats. Do you think that's actually going to occur, or do you think the Israeli Election party in the end will try to pull out a victory there?
Well, of course they're going to try to pull out a victory, but they have 13 seats in the current Knesset. We see that they're in single digits right now for the home stretch. I expect that Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman is going to do whatever he can to go ahead and really make that push towards the election day itself to gather as many voters as he can. But right now it looks like he's probably going to be one of the biggest losers of this election.
One of the big issues of the election is Bibi's speech at the Congress. Why was that such a big deal? I mean, pretty much all the parties are against Iran and Iran's nuclear program. Why are they making it such an issue?
Well, it becomes an issue anytime you see that the Prime Minister feels very strongly about something. If you're running against him, you're going to have to take the other side of that issue. And that's really what you had if you're looking at Herzog or Livni or Lapid. Most of the people running against the Prime Minister had to go ahead and take the other position on that. One
of the other things that we saw is at the beginning, when the elections were called, the Bayit Yehudi was riding high in the polls, and then slowly but slowly they started going down. Where's that coming from?
Well, it's coming from 3 different places. One was there was the decision to put someone on the list that did not go over so popular, and in the end he was not put on the final list. Another thing was a lot of voters feeling that they were afraid that the Prime Minister might not be reelected, and therefore they moved over from the Bayit Yehudi to the Likud. And the third side is the minute that they saw that the Yachad party, led by former Shas leader Eli Yishai, was passing the polls in every single poll, that made a lot of people who were hesitant to not have their vote thrown away vote for that party. We have an electoral threshold here in Israel where anyone who does not get 3.25% of the vote will not be in the next Knesset.
Everyone's talking about already phase 2, what's going to happen with the coalition government, who's going to sit in it, and everyone assumes that there won't be surprises, that the ultra-Orthodox parties won't sit with Yair Lapid, who's a secularist, and that the Arab Party won't sit with Israel Beitenu, and Israel Beitenu won't sit with Meretz. Can we expect some surprises when it's all over?
You're always going to have surprises. That's the beautiful thing about Israeli politics. But if you're a betting person, you have to put money on something. Again, the way that we're looking at the polls today, it looks like Netanyahu is going to be reelected to a 4th term. Herzog would really have to pull a rabbit out of the hat to really go ahead and gather what he needs in terms of parties that would be willing to sit in his future coalition.
Jeremy, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
What I would like to tell everybody who are watching here at home is that Israel might be a complicated place. Our politics might be hard to understand, but we're really an amazing country, an amazing people, and we really love our friends in the international community. I'd like to invite all of you to come over here to Israel to tour, to see the Holy Land, and really enjoy what is the best and most beautiful place on this planet.
Thank you.
Unbiased.
Thank you, Jeremy, for being on the show, and thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.